Oh hey man, what's up? What I'm doing right now? Just a bit of gaming. Yeah, I did switch to Linux, but why shouldn't it work? Of course it works.
If you asked someone a few years ago if gaming on Linux was a good idea, then the answer would have been most certainly no. At least when it's coming from a casual user. But with tools like Wine, which allows .exe Windows applications to run under Linux, and other compatibility tools that allow for hardware acceleration, many different solutions, like Lutris, were born. But it wasn't until the release of Valve's Proton layer, or now it is called SteamPlay, when gaming on Linux took a turn. So what is Proton anyway? Well, it's a so-called compatibility layer, which consists of several tools like Wine, DXVK and many more, in order to make Windows games run on Linux. This is done the following way. Whenever a game is trying to call a dependency or a certain feature set that is just not available on Linux, then the Proton layer catches the request and translates it into something that Linux understands. Then the API just does the usual processing and returns the information back to the game. And it does this very efficiently. However, not everything just works right out of the box. There is a reason why newer games like Halo Infinite just don't perform as well than older DirectX 9 games. DirectX 12, for example, comes with many features that are just not yet implemented in Vulkan and therefore just cannot be translated. But this is getting fixed over time. So what if you want to play new games right on release day? I'm sorry, you might get disappointed. The sad reality is that Linux is just not considered by most developers, and the fragmentation of all the different Linux distributions is not helping. But the Steam Deck may actually change that. If you take a look at the website ProtonDB, as of Wednesday, the 16th of March, over 758 games have been verified by Valve, and 1,399 are listed as playable. Be aware that Linux itself does have a lot more games that are compatible, but it's safe to say that the verified games are a much more safer bet to run well. One of the main problems PC gaming in general always had was that they just don't have a benchmark or a reference. Many of the AAA titles release on console as well. So if you want to make a PC game, then you just take a look at, does it run on the console? If yes, then it will also run on PC. With the Steam Deck, however, game developers also do have a PC benchmark. And with this in mind, they might even choose to develop the games with other APIs instead of DirectX 12. At least, if this is even possible. Doom Eternal, for example, is compatible with Vulkan natively and runs great on the deck. The more the Steam Deck sells, the more effort will be put in by the developers to make it run well. And even if they try to rely on Proton and the translation, they can optimize their games by just not using certain DirectX features. What I want to say is that if the Steam Deck is successful, then many developers will get on board. And we need them to. The single most biggest issue on Linux yet is the use of anti-cheat software. I mean, taking measures against cheaters is good, right? Well, when it comes to Linux, it's kinda bad. Even though many services like Easy Anti-Cheat or BattleEye are supporting Linux right now, it's up to the game developer to enable this support. Bungie, for example, just straight up refuses to make Destiny 2 available on Linux. And they even threatened players with a ban if they try to bypass the anti-cheat. And even if newer games choose to be compatible with Linux, what about the old games? There are still many games out there that run with an anti-cheat software, but are no longer actively maintained by the developer. Or the version of the anti-cheat is so old that it just doesn't support Linux at all. The important part here is attention. I'm certain that even Bungie is going to change their minds when there's a few million players on a Stream Deck, or just Linux in general. But this is up to us. Alright, I think I've talked enough about Steam. Let's talk about games that just are not on Steam. EA, Epic Games, and even Ubisoft have their own game launcher. And especially if you're coming from Windows, there's a good chance that you purchase the game on their respectable platform. Now here's the cool part. It doesn't matter. Tools like Lutris allow for the installation of such launchers and their games. And since even Proton is nothing else than just a compatibility tool, you can even use that for installing them. I, for example, play Far Cry 5 through Steam and Ubisoft Connect. And it just works perfectly. The only launcher that kinda had problems was the Rockstar Games launcher. But to be fair, that launcher sucks in Windows as well. For some reason, it refused to detect the right amount of storage on my system. I don't know exactly if this is a Proton wine problem or something completely different, but Ubisoft Connect worked just fine. I'm putting this one on Rockstar. The only thing that really doesn't work so far is the Xbox Game Pass. I mean, it makes sense. Xbox belongs to Microsoft. However, Valve said that they are happy to help Microsoft if they want to release the Game Pass on Steam as well. My thoughts currently are that they're probably going to make this work, because Microsoft is a very open company when it comes to games. I mean, they allow Xbox games on PC nowadays, and they even ported some of the games to the Nintendo Switch. So I think that we might get an update on this very soon. But now, really enough about compatibility. Let's talk about performance. The FPS were either very similar to Windows, or in some cases even better? This could be due to Linux being lighter than Windows, especially when it comes to bloatware and stuff running in the background. Or Vulkan is just slightly faster when processing certain things and the translation doesn't really matter? Dunno, don't care. The important thing is that it just works. By the way, it might be worth mentioning that if you experience any stutter in the beginning, this might be due to shader caching, especially when you're playing games that are not on Steam. Shader caching is something that literally every game nowadays does. And the reason for that is that instead of compiling everything over and over and over again, you just compile it once, you save it, and then you just load it from there. So if you experience any stutter at the beginning, don't just jump to conclusions if everything is laggy. Give it some time, play a bit, and then judge if there is an actual problem. So in conclusion, is gaming on Linux ready? Well, kind of. Not everything is compatible, there's a problem with anti-cheat, and some things just don't work entirely. But we're slowly getting there. So, is it good now? Unfortunately, not. Due to the technical problems, especially on release day, it's not that great. Is it good enough? Absolutely. Every game I play, except Valorant, Destiny 2 and Face It, due to their anti-cheat problems, just worked. But those of course are not the newest from the newest. So if you're only playing single player games, and you don't have a problem of maybe waiting a few days after a release date, then go ahead and try it. It is really awesome, and as soon as the anti-cheat problems, as well as the Xbox Game Pass on Steam, gets resolved, then I'm ready to ditch Windows 100%. And that's where I'll leave it. So if you like this video, then make sure to hit that subscribe button and also consider subscribing. If you have any questions, then just leave a comment or even check out my live streaming channel. The link is down below. And without anything more to add, good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, wherever you are. I'll see you around.